Even the fact that we're even having this conversation, here's all the movies you've done. It like doesn't seem real to me. It's like, I did all that? It doesn't seem real. Hi, I'm Michael Shannon, and this is the timeline of my career.
Brad, how was the wedding?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for making Debbie go through with it and everything.
All I did was fan the flame of her passion for you, Fred.
You are the best.
I started out in Chicago doing non-equity theater, which is non-union, you know, didn't even get paid or nothing, just scraping by. But there was a casting director in town named Jane Brody, and she had a scene study class. One day she said, hey, Mike, I want you to come in and meet Harold Ramis. I said, really? You're kidding? She's like, no, he's gonna make a movie here. Super nervous going in to meet Mr. Ramis, but it was just as sweet as could be. You know, there wasn't much to it, the scene. It's basically me shouting WrestleMania, but I guess he was charmed by what I did, and I got the part.
WrestleMania! No way!
The funnest thing about that job was really just getting to watch Bill Murray do his thing and improvise. And since I was in the restaurant, I just got a real tutorial getting to watch him do his thing. The biggest thing I learned watching Bill Murray was that it's important to have fun. He was just so relaxed. He was just having so much fun. It's easy to forget that sometimes. He just had a real ease about him. He was so comfortable in his own skin, you know?
You hear about my father? He died this past weekend.
I made this film, Shotgun Stories, which was the beginning of my long partnership with Jeff Nichols. I was doing something called the Sundance Filmmakers Lab, and a fellow named Gary Hawkins, he had a script called Downtime. But Gary taught at the North Carolina School for the Arts. He was very proud of what he had done at the lab, and he showed it to his students. And one of his students came up to him after seeing this and said, Mr. Hawkins, do you know how to get a hold of Michael Shannon? The kid said, well, I wrote the script and I really want him to read it. And Gary kind of looked at him like, you gotta be kidding me. Next thing I know, in the mail, I got the script for Shotgun Stories. I read it, and I thought it was the most incredible screenplay I had ever read in my life. I called this kid up and I said, man, you're deep, like this is really cool. He said, look, I don't have any money at all. Like I wanna shoot on film, and any money I do have is gonna go to buying the film. He said, I'll take good care of you. My mom will cook dinner for us every night. I was like, you know, what the heck? You only live once. And I just had the most amazing experience making that movie. Probably the hardest scene in Shotgun Stories was when I go to the hospital and I hear that kid's dead. That was a hard scene. Just because there's a thaw that happens, and that's, you know, for this guy that you've watched the whole time kind of not really showing his hand very much, for him to suddenly receive this incredibly emotional news and actually have a fairly genuine reaction to it, that was probably the trickiest part.
Now, I don't need to be told that a man who goes after his mother with a coffee table is putting himself in a weak position legally. That's obvious.
My recollection of my audition for Revolutionary Road is that I actually went into the office. I went in and I read with the casting director. I was doing the scene, and yeah, she felt like I upset her. I guess particularly when I said the line, why don't you do us all a favor, why don't you shut up? I think that really got to her.
How about doing everybody a favor? How about shutting up?
Once I did my audition, then I went in to meet Sam. I remember driving from San Diego to Los Angeles to meet him. And the whole time driving up there, I was like, God, I hope I can do this again. And then I walked into the office and Sam was there and he said, oh no, you don't have to do it again. No, I just want to meet you. I was like, oh, whew, thank God. Playing a guy who says what he thinks and believes at all times is liberating, I guess. But I mean, the thing you have to remember was the company I was in. So I'm trying to do this in a room with, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet and Kathy Bates and Richard Easton. I'm kind of the bottom of that totem pole, and yet I'm trying to like take over the situation.
Have you any champagne? Whiskey, perhaps?
We do, sir.
Nelson.
It's all right, dear.
I got a call from my manager, and he said, "Did you watch The Sopranos?" I was like, why? And he's like, "Well, the fella that made that, Terrence Winter, he's making another show called Boardwalk Empire, and he wants to meet with you about it." I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay." It'll be him and Martin Scorsese. I said, "Can you repeat that?" It was on a day that I was shooting up in Hudson, and they were like, "Look, just as soon as you're done shooting, get in the car and get to the hotel as quick as you can, because they're waiting for you." The day of the meeting, we go overtime. Finally, we're like, "Okay, we got it, that's a wrap." And I like bolt out of that chair, I'm like, "Get me in that car." Get on the road to go into Manhattan, bumper to bumper traffic, like a frickin' parking lot. Without a doubt, the longest car ride of my entire life. I thought I was gonna have a nervous breakdown. I finally get to the frickin' hotel. Thank God they're still there. And I'm so fried from being so stressed out about getting there. And Scorsese just starts, "So the show's about this and that, and yeah, it's set in the Prohibition. Do you know much about this period in time? Because and Terrence Winter's just sitting there nodding his head. And I'm like, it's just all going like, I'm like, And then Terrence Winter's like, "We don't want you to play a gangster or a mobster or something. We want you to play, you're like the Elliot Ness guy. So I'm the good guy?" They're like, yeah.
Everybody, stay seated.
I think a lot of people imagine that when you get to be on a show for a long time, you know, you really get to dig into, you know, something. But Boardwalk had a really kind of odd rhythm to it for the actors, I think. Like, let's say it took, you know, I don't know, 5 months to do a season of Boardwalk or something like that. Over that period of time, you might only work like 20 days, a couple of scenes in every episode. But you're just not like going and punching the clock every day. You don't necessarily wind up feeling like entrenched in it so much. It more feels like you're like a spy or something, and you get the call, you know, "Meet here Monday at 8 a.m. And you're like, okay. And you know what to do. What I thought was gonna happen is that you were gonna see Van Alden fall from grace, and then you were gonna see him like a phoenix rise from the ashes. It was interesting that that didn't really happen. What actually wound up being the storyline is he just kept sinking further and further into abject despair and humiliation. I'm not gonna lie, I would have preferred the first storyline maybe, but you know, people seem to be really entertained by watching poor Nelson's struggle. So who am I to say different?
I've been having these dreams. I guess they're more like nightmares.
The first time Jeff gave me Take Shelter, it was not to play Curtis. It was to play his friend. And I read the script and I said, "Jeff, it's just even more staggering than Shotgun Stories. We gotta make this." And so there was someone he had in mind. Eventually it just didn't come to pass. So Jeff was like, "God, well, who am I gonna get to play Curtis?" And finally he's like, "Well, I don't know. Mike, you wanna do it?" I'm like, "If the money's right, yeah, I guess." That's a joke, because there wasn't any money on that either. Yeah, I said, yeah, I want to play Curtis. Yeah, in terms of like scenes from Take Shelter, everybody's always like the fish fry, and they're like, you know, the scene where I flip over the table, and that's the scene, you know. And I guess people met, they're like, "Well, how do you do that?" And frankly, that scene came and went fairly quickly. We didn't do it a lot of times. We didn't really need to do it a lot of times. The scene to me in Take Shelter that still to this day gets me emotional even thinking about it. The scene where she's trying to get him to open the door and go back outside. She says, "It's okay, honey. Open the door. It'll be okay." And he's like, I can't. That scene right there is one of the, I don't know. That scene just kills me.
What do you got for us?
Well, Dino had a date for the 28th, you know? We can't take the blame if you change it last minute.
Hey, that's fucking bullshit.
Oh, Ray, those eyes just, I never see anything like Ray Liotta's eyes. Our characters don't have the best relationship in that movie. We never got like super friendly. I mean, we didn't antagonize each other, but I was freaking out on that movie a lot because I was playing Richard Kuklinski and I had my hands full. I didn't really talk much between takes. Ray's one of those people that had the capacity, the ability to shock and intimidate me, which is pretty hard to do, but he could do it.
I will find him, Laura.
I will find him!
Zack Snyder wants to meet you. He's making a Superman movie, Man of Steel. He wants you to play General Zod. I'm like, really? Terrence Stamp? And I remembered like seeing those movies when I was a kid and being like, that man is the most badass man I've ever seen in my life. He scared the crap out of me.
Your father stole the registry's codex and stored it in the capsule that brought you here.
For what purpose?
So that Krypton can live again.
I would argue that Man of Steel is, in a way, a significant story, like culturally, not just an entertainment thing. Because at the end of the day, what it was about a civilization, right, that ruins their own planet. I've never heard of that before. And then decides, well, the solution to that is to go to another planet and take it, and then we'll just go live there. And I thought, yeah, this story's important. It was a totally different take on Zod. Terrence Stamp was just mean. He was just being mean to everybody. And Zod was like, look, my job is to protect my civilization. Like that speech that he has, and now I have no people. Like, I thought that was like beautiful and heartbreaking. But I also just like Zack so much. I really, really like Zack Snyder a lot.
After everything that you put this family through for the last 10 years, that any of us are gonna support you. That any of us are gonna give you, like Dad liked to say, a single red dime. You're nuts!
Rian Johnson is just so much fun to work for. We didn't have a talk about improvising necessarily. I mean, the script as is was beautiful. That's why we were all there, was because of the script, because it was just, we hadn't read anything like that in such a long time. Nobody even seen anything like that in a long time. I just couldn't help it. Like, I just wandered off into Walt land and it just came out. If you do it, it's not like he says, could you not do that? He's like, oh, wow, that was cool. I mean, the thing about that movie is that we all were having, and it goes back to the thing I said about Bill Murray. Like, this was a perfect instance. It was like, just go in and have fun. Like, amuse yourself. And if you amuse yourself, odds are you might amuse a small amount of other people. It was without a doubt the most fun I've ever had with a group of actors on a movie set. The house was up on a hill, and if you walk down the hill through the little forest, there's a big parking lot, and it was filled with all these movie star trailers. Nobody ever went to their trailer. They would just sit there empty all day, because in the house there was a basement, and they just put cast chairs in there, and we just sit around in the basement all day. Jamie Lee Curtis would hang out in the kitchen of the house upstairs with the owners of the house, and they would cook. It was surreal. That's the least stressed out I've ever been at work. The most stressful part of that job was doing my scene with Christopher Plummer. A, because I was acting with Christopher Plummer. May he rest in peace. Two, because Ryan said I want to do it in one setup, which just always gives me the hives, because there's nothing to cut to. It was a hoot.
Hey, Tammy, you know this one?
Oh, I know all your songs, Mr. Jones.
Oh, no. My daddy was Mr. Jones. You call me baby.
Tell me why, baby.
George and Tammy was just totally like get in the submarine and go deep. That journey those two people go through, it's hard to quantify it. It's just so enormous and goes in so many different directions. I guess I'd like to be able to say that we had formulated some sort of game plan. We never really did. We just understood it separately from each other, just because of the amount of research we had done. We'd watched all the interviews we could watch. We talked to all the people that would make themselves available to us. And, you know, Jessica had such a long time with this material. It just kind of made sense to us. We didn't really have to say, okay, so in this scene, should it be like this or that? It was a very organic thing.
This world must die.
So the Flash comes around. As I recall, at the end of Man of Steel, Superman breaks my neck and kills me, which was the cause of much consternation among some fans because Superman's not supposed to kill people. But I say to Superman, it's either me or you, so he has to do it. So then I get this call. I'm like, they saw Man of Steel, right? And my manager's like, yeah, they saw Man of Steel, but it's different. I'm like, what is it? It's a multiverse. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I was very upset by what happened to Zach on the Justice League and all that. It didn't feel right to me. Now, I know I probably don't know all the sides to the story. I should probably just keep my mouth shut. But like I said, I really, really, really love Zach and really appreciated that opportunity. But then I talked to Andy, who's also a lovely guy and very, very creative and fun. And, you know, I said, hey, you know, I would really feel awkward about doing it without Zach's blessing. So until I get that, you're just gonna have to wait. So I reached out to Zach, and he gave me his blessing and said, it's okay. Go, you can do it. And I appreciated that, and then I said yes. But it was a very different thing because, like, Man of Steel was like a year of my life between the training. We did a whole summer of physical training leading up to the shooting, and the shoot was like 6 months long or something. And I was in and out of Flash in like a flash, 2 or 3 weeks. That's it. The Flash isn't my story. You know, I'm there as an adversary, a threat, a problem to be dealt with. The Flash is really the Flash's story. Actors are the aperture between the audience and the story, and you should not be seen. The more transparent you are, then the more the audience gets to receive the story. You have to care about the story more than your own performance. You're serving a writer and a director, and you're delivering their intent to the audience. Do everything that you can possibly think of to deliver that to them.